Okay. So first I'm going to pull up something here. All right, so yeah, I was looking at WTF visualizations today, and I know there's some good ones on here, the green people. But one of the interesting ones I saw in here is this one. This was posted by the Wall Street Journal yesterday, and this is about music sales and Apple Music versus Spotify. And what's great about this visualization is that these two charts are comparing totally different metrics that are really not related. The scales are implied to be the same scale. All these vertical or horizontals line up, but they're totally different scales. That's a pretty good one. Wall Street Journal gets the award this time. There's a lot of other good ones on here. So anyway, just saw that one today. All right, get the presentation going here. Yeah, by the way, best data visualization that XKCD's ever done. They've done a lot of them over the years, and I think this is their best one. It's pretty good. Anyway, I'm Jeff. I work at Netflix, and I'm on the Edge Insights team, and we're building a very large Ember app for doing data visualization of our Edge systems. And I'm going to be talking about how we use D3 with Ember and some of our approaches to building this big app that we're building. So the first thing I wanted to mention is I'm not going to get like in depth on anything. I'm not going to do any live coding, anything like that. But what I really wanted to do is talk about why we decided to do things the way we did and what some of our approaches were. And the first thing, if you get nothing else out of this talk, the most important thing is don't use widget frameworks, because I've gone down that road and it's always a bad idea. Every time I've tried to use widget frameworks, I've always regretted it. And you don't want to be like frustrated Picard here and wonder why you didn't use D3 to begin with. So there are many, I can even, I'll skip it, but there are lists and lists of data visualization products out there, and you've heard of probably High Charts and Tableau and some of these other ones, and whoa, there we go. Got it, Ben?
I'm sorry, I wasn't on recording, so. All right. We're good. Yes?
Recording?
Is it going?
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So anyway, I'm going to be talking about why you should be using D3 and how we made it fit into an Ember app and Ember components and that kind of thing. The first thing about D3 is it's a programming tool. It's not a widget, and that means it's very open-ended as far as what you can do with it. It's slightly higher learning curve, but there's a lot more potential to do cool things. You can get innovative with animation. You're not restricted to the animation that the widget supports. You can actually, and there is a demo I wanted to show here, and this is something that the New York Times did. It was probably built by Mike Bostock, who is the inventor of D3. And I've always thought this was a good demo because this really shows a very easy but very complicated looking thing you can do. So they created this chart, and this is called a bubble chart, and there are all these bubbles on here, and if you expand it out, it goes like this and kind of animates into this kind of opens up like that. And in D3, this kind of thing is very easy to do. You would never be able to do something like this with the widget framework. In D3, it's actually pretty easy to do because all you have to do is figure out how to lay it out in this first state. And D3 has tools for doing things like these cluster bubble charts, so you don't have to code that yourself. It will help you figure it out. And then you have to figure out how to draw it in this state. So you have to figure out the beginning and the end, and D3 figures out everything in between. And so it's actually very easy to do, and try doing that with Tableau or High Charts. All right, so get back to the presentation here. Yeah, strong user community. A lot of people use D3. One of the problems I've had with widget frameworks is that about a week, maybe 2 weeks into using the widget product, you will start to fight it. So you'll hit the limit of what you can actually do with the widget. Then you'll spend another week maybe trying to fight it and get it to do one last little bit, and then you'll finally give up, and it still won't be doing exactly what you want when you could have spent that time learning D3 and getting exactly what you want. So that's really a better way to go there. So D3, it mainly is for rendering SVG graphics, which is supported by all the major browsers. The main purpose of D3, like I said, it's a programming tool. So what it's good at is doing the math for laying out SVG graphics. Mainly the tough thing is, okay, you have data that you want to visualize. So you have domain data like maybe a time scale, time series data. You might have volume like RPS or rates over time, that kind of thing. How do you translate that into pixel coordinates on the screen? Well, that's what D3 does. Is it takes domain data and it converts it to pixel positions on the screen so that you can draw circles and lines and make data visualizations. And as far as getting started, Mike Bostock has Mike Bostock has an example called 3 Little Circles. Look for that one. And then my favorite tutorial, this is the one I tell people to look at if you want to learn D3. It's called D3 for Mere Mortals. Just look that one up, and it's a good one. It's maybe 3 or 4 screenfuls of tutorial, and it's just the right amount of depth, but not too deep. So it's a good one to look at. All right, D3 with Ember. So there are 2 ways that D3 fits into an Ember app that we found. The first way is to use D3 outright, the way it was designed, but put that inside of an Ember component. The other way to do it is to have the Ember component with its template render the SVG, but use D3 just to do the math, just to do some of the, one thing D3 will do is it will generate the path that lets you draw a line graph, for instance. Well, you wouldn't put that line graph into your template, but D3 can actually generate that. The path element might be in your template, but the content of it that drives its shape might be just inside of a computed property that's computed by D3. So those are the 2 ways to do it, and I'm gonna get a little bit more detail about how those things work. So this would be fitting D3 into the lifestyle of an Ember component. So there are basically 2 things to look at here. There's did insert element. That would mean that the component has rendered on the screen. At that point, you can start running D3 commands. You can do things like you can append SVG and bind data to it. I'm not going to get into depth about what that all means right now, but it's enough just to know that you can tell D3 that you want to append elements onto the screen, and you want to bind data to it, and then it will figure out how to associate the 2. You then, number 2, and the number 2 bullet point here is that D3 has enter, update, and exit. The important thing there is that D3 knows how to add new things based on new data coming in. It knows how to update what's on the screen based on data changing, and it knows how to remove things when data goes away. It knows how to do those things, and that can happen inside of an Ember component. And D3 also has its own event system where it can do things like mouse interaction. And there are some cases where you can't use, or where it's difficult to do it yourself, or to use Ember's mouse system, for instance. And so you can actually have D3 do it as long as you emit the final result using Ember actions out of your component. So the idea there is you can do whatever you want with D3 inside of the component. If you want to emit any actions, use Ember actions. Don't leak like DOM events out of the component. And then finally, in will destroy element is when you can do kind of tear down kind of things. And there again, D3 has ways of tearing down what it's done, especially if you do any of those custom mouse events, that kind of thing. You want to tear down those kind of things. This is very basically what templates might look like. So we have D3 Classic at the top, which is using D3 outright, where you're doing all the DOM manipulation with D3. You're telling it to insert an SVG document, append circles or rectangles to it, whatever, or a path. The second one would be inside of a template. So here we have the one in the middle is where we have a graph, and we have the SVG defined in the template, and we have a path defined in the template, but you can see that the D3 path string, where's my mouse cursor? The D3 path string is a computer property that you can insert there. And so I can have D3 calculate that, and that gets inserted into the template. And so instead of having D3 add my visualization elements to the screen, I'm having the template do it. And then finally, there's another level to this, and that's component usage at the bottom. And that is where we have actually encapsulated some of this behavior into our own components. And my coworker, Ben Lesh, did a lot of work on this to where we took Ember components and made them composable. So we can actually create graphs and things by, you can put a graph component on the screen, and where's my cursor? It's around here somewhere, there we go. Oops. So you put a graph on the screen, add axes, a mouse tracker, line graph, that kind of stuff. And this was just to make it easier for us. And this stuff is all on GitHub. It's actually open source. Anyone can use it. And the idea here is that you don't necessarily have to learn D3 to do this stuff. So you can create graphs just by dropping components on the screen. This is not the same as using widgets, though, like a widget framework. But the difference is these are composable. So instead of having one widget that's a graph, you have composable components. So you can mix and match these much better than using a widget. And I'll get to a demo in a minute here. And a couple supporting tools we use. I just mentioned NFGraph is the one I was just talking about. We also use RxJS, which is a way of dealing with live data coming in on data streams. Not going to be able to get into that in depth in this talk, but just to say that Rx has helped with performance quite a bit. We used to have to do things like put work out on web workers and that kind of thing, because we were doing so much work with, like, say, transforming data after it got to the browser. Well, using Rx, you can eliminate that, because you can basically eliminate having to loop over data to do transforms, filtering, mapping, sorting, that kind of thing. So Ben has actually talked about Rx at meetups before, and I'm not going to get into that today, but I now want to show you a demo of the app that we built, so I'll point out some of the things I just mentioned. All right, so this is the app we're building. It's called Argus, and it has a bunch of views and a bunch of drill-ins. I had to blur the text to obfuscate some things, just because there's some things in here that we can't leak out to the public. So I'll just click through some of this. So we generally will start with a table view that's kind of an overview, and then we can drill into graphs like this. And here we're seeing over on this side, this is real-time data coming in. You can kind of see the tick lines kind of clicking along. And this is more of a historical view. And in this case, we're looking at a 24-hour historical view of the data that we just drilled into. And here's another version of it. This is some thread pool usage. This is showing thread pools, how much the thread pool is actually being used based on how big it is, and peak versus current usage. And that we can also drill into those. And same thing there. We can change the time scale. So this is all done using Ember components. So each of these sections is a component. Each of these controls up here is a component. Everything's componentized in this case. And in most cases, we're using the NFGraph components that I talked about, the composable stuff. Let me go into another one here. Here's a view that has a bunch of graphs on it. There again, you can drill in. Got a sand key diagram going on here. As data comes in on the data stream, it'll update to go into view there. And that also has a drill in. And I'll look at one more view. This is the customer view. I'm going to look up my own account just to give you one more example. So I'm looking up my own Netflix account. And what I can do is I can actually see, like, what movies have I viewed in the past 3 days. We'll go 3 days. Here's a timeline. All right, so there's a timeline that shows all the movies that I've watched recently, like Great Escape is on here, et cetera. And this is kind of interesting because what we did with Ember components is that the background is a component that has the time scale on it, and then each of these green rectangles is actually a component that is nothing more than, we call them basically SVG primitive components. It's basically an SVG rectangle, but it knows how to read the scale that it's on top of. So when I drop this onto the graph, it knows about the time scale underneath it and sets itself up in the right position. So instead of giving this rectangle a pixel width of, say, 10 pixels, I can tell it it's 30 minutes wide, because that's how the duration of that event. And it knows how to put itself in the right position, the right size. So that's some more componentizing we did. And that's also included in that NFgraph package that I had mentioned. All right, so that's Argus. And let's see. How's it? Oh yeah, so another thing I wanted to mention about the way we built components is that we're not so much doing the MVC thing anymore. What we've gone to is component all the things. This is kind of the new way Ember and some of the other frameworks are doing things, is that everything is now in components. And what we did is we decided that the best approach here was to package up everything within a component. So any graph you saw in the app is a component that has its template and code, and it also has a data stream subscription. So it's not going to an external model to get its data. It's actually all contained within that component. And each component on the page has its own data stream subscription. So we can mix and match those. If I wanted to take one of those graphs and put on another page, its data subscription would move with it, and it would just be able to load it up. And our data stream implementation will handle that, and so we can stand up and tear down subscriptions as we need to. And since we're not doing the MVC thing so much, whoops. Let me get it back to here. Sorry about that. All right. Since we are not doing the MVC thing so much, separating concerns is by use of modules and services and mix-in. So you can have just as much separation of concerns, just as unit testable, all that, without necessarily doing the monolithic MVC pattern on view. All right, and the last thing I wanted to mention is, along with D3, there are a couple of other data visualization libraries that I'm liking lately. One of them is called Leaflet for doing maps. D3 has a really good geomapping function built into it, but I've been looking at better ways to do that, and Leaflet is one way of doing Google Maps type mapping where you can zoom in and out, and it's tiled and all that kind of stuff. And 3JS is a WebGL library for helping you do that kind of stuff. And I'm actually going to show you one more demo to give you an idea of what you can do with Ember in that respect. So first I will go to, this is a project I did. This is an Ember app that is going to show movie starts in real time across the world. So it'll take a second for it to start getting data. But so I now have real-time data streaming in that's showing movie starts on the Netflix system. This is not all of Netflix's volume. This is just a very small sampling off the top. I think I'm grabbing maybe 60 events per second off the top. And so that's what you're seeing here. So anyway, these are all, every time somebody starts a new movie, it shows up on here. And we can do things like we can look at the box art that comes up. We see the box art. We can see which movie they're viewing, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to show this, but we can actually see what's the most popular one, like in the past 3-minute rolling window. So of course Sense8 is on there. It's like, yeah, not too hard to guess. All right, so that's that, and then people ask me, well, that needs to be in 3D so that I can spin that thing around, and so I had to go and do that. So one more demo here. Let's start that up. One of the cool things about working at Netflix is you have a chance to do cool things if you want to. We have hack days where we can show off or stretch our legs a little bit, and this is one I did for a recent hack day. And this is the same idea as the one I just showed you, except that now we're in 3D. So there we go. And this is an Ember app. So we have data streaming in real time, and it's rendered in WebGL, so it's all hardware accelerated and all that kind of stuff.
Now, if I remember correctly, this is an award-winning Ember application. Am I right?
I did get one of the Hack Day trophies for this one. Yeah, they give out a bunch of them, and I got one of them.
Two-time winner, Jeff Butsch.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So that's that one. All right. So that is data visualization with Ember. That's all I have to show. So I guess, are there any questions? Yeah.
You guys build the same dashboards and apps for mobile devices as well?
Like to show the dashboard on mobile devices? So, something we're planning on doing, we haven't yet. I mean, I've run this on mobile devices, but as far as like a purpose-built for a small screen, we haven't done yet, but we're planning to, yeah.
Are you concerned about performance?
Of course we are, and we're always looking at performance, and that is a concern. Although some recent testing we did, it like on my iPhone 5, this app seems to work just fine. Although it's not really designed for that small of a screen, but we are certainly going to be optimizing things for small screen and for mobile. We probably need to rethink everything for especially if we were to do something like for like a sysop to be able to support the system on their phone, for instance, we may have to rethink exactly what is it they want to see, and we wouldn't show them these big views like we are now. They may only want to see one very targeted thing at a time. So, but like I said, we haven't quite got there yet. So, yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
So one of the things I've been thinking about, I'm kind of a beginning Ember guy, and the idea of the URL being an expression of the state of the app, and if you go back to the same URL, you see the same thing. So with these visualization apps, do the URLs reflect the state you've gotten to by moving stuff around and clicking and pulling? Like, can you paste that URL and will the page that comes up look exactly like what you copied it from?
Absolutely, yeah. And we designed our whole app to work that way. That was actually one of our requirements when we started. And it's really up to you how much of the page state you want to be expressed in the URL. In our case, we want things, well, let me pull up the app and I can show you an example. Okay, so obviously which tab you're in is expressed in the URL as I click around. Things like, let me go to, so I want to go here. Okay, so like in this customer view, if I go and look up my account, then already it's in the URL. I haven't even clicked search yet, and it's already part of the URL, and that's something that I can navigate back to later. And now that I'm here, my account ID, for instance, shows up in the URL. Also, if I do things like I click on this tab down here, you can see the tab ID up here changes. Customer, yeah. So the customer tab is in this case is actually equal to the customer ID of the tab that I clicked. So as I click around to different tabs, it's actually showing up here. And I could copy and paste this in, and it would go right back to this, not only the same page, the same search, but also the tab that I was on would also be the same. So it's really up to you how much of it you want to put in there. Ember has a fantastic router, actually, and makes it really easy to do that kind of stuff. Between the router and query parameters, which is also easy to do in Ember, makes it really easy to do those kind of things. In fact, if you make the query parameter the source of truth for a setting, then all you have to do is use that as a property elsewhere in the page, and it'll just work. And so whenever you make a change to that property, it just automatically changes in the URL, and that's actually how all this stuff works. So for instance, the customer ID that this page reflects, that property is actually owned by the URL. And so then the rest of the page loads based on that. So that's how that works.
Cool, thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you.